Hello, this is your host, Austin Hopkins, and welcome to the Introvert Leader Podcast. Welcome to episode 25. I'm really happy to have you guys here today, especially in the new year. We're in 2024, folks. Kind of hard to believe. And today we're going to be talking about work-life balance. I'm going to break down my thoughts on the topic. But before that, I want to give you a little update on what I've been into recently. So let me hit you with it. Number one, music. I have been listening to her, H.E.R. She is amazing. She's one of my favorite artists who is R&B, soul. She collaborates with amazing artists. And if you're a fan of like SZA or Summer Walker, guarantee you're going to enjoy hers music. And my favorite song of hers, no pun intended there, is Slide. And this is off of the album Back of My Mind, which came out in 2021, I believe. So go check that song out if you want a little entry into the type of music that she does. And that whole album, Back of My Mind, is really, really solid as well. So hopefully you enjoy. Okay, YouTube content. I'm a big fan of this guy named Doug DeMuro. And he's a car geek who basically nerds out over cars. His videos are usually kind of a profile of a new car, an interesting car, and he kind of gets in there and shows you all the quirks and features. So check him out. Definitely kind of a nerdy car vibe. So if you're into cars, I think you probably heard of him, or if not, definitely will enjoy checking it out. Okay, TV movies. I recently found this new show on Apple TV, surprise, surprise. It's called Echo 3, and it's an action thriller with a really interesting storyline. Essentially, a brother and a husband lose their sister, their spouse, in a overseas kind of CIA plot, right? And essentially, their whole thing is they need to go and save her. I believe they're Army Rangers or like Navy Special Forces. So they're really equipped, really trained. And it's kind of showing them going into Colombia and Venezuela to rescue her. So super interesting. We're about 5 or 6 episodes in and just kind of been binge watching that every night with the wifey. Really, really enjoying it so far. Okay, moving on. Updates. I want to give you guys a quick update. A few weeks back, I dropped the Introvert Leader Dispatch. That's that newsletter. That's the companion piece to the podcast where I break down, podcast episodes in depth. I talk about things, more personal things like music and coffee and all the other kind of interesting stuff that I find interesting, I guess, for lack of better terms. And excited to announce I just dropped the second edition. So that just came out a few days ago. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please go and look in the show notes and the episode notes, and you'll find the subscribe button. I'd love for you to subscribe and let me know what you think about the vibe of the Introvert Leader Dispatch. So moving on, before we jump into it, I want to give you guys a little quote to set the scene, if you will. And the quote is by the author Zig Ziglar. I'm sure you probably heard about him, one of the most successful business writers of all time. And his quote is, "You can't truly be considered successful in your business life if your home life is in shambles." I'll read it again. You can't truly be considered successful in your business life if your home life is in shambles. That's a good quote, folks. That one, I was like, oof, that kind of hit me. And hopefully it kind of hits you too, because I think it really ties in perfectly to what we're going to be talking about today, which is work-life balance. Okay. We're going to transition and we are going to do a listener Q&A. Okay, today's question comes from Noah, and Noah has asked, when is it appropriate to speak up during a meeting when you're the most junior? I like this question. I think this is a really good question, actually, Noah. So it kind of has a gray answer, though. So first and foremost, my rule of thumb is that I only speak up if I'm confident that what I'm going to say is going to add value. I don't speak up just to speak up. I don't speak up so that I look like I'm paying attention. I don't say things during the meeting to get people's attention so that they know I'm important or that I think I'm smart. I only speak up when there's actually something that I can add value. So whether that's a question, whether that's a thought about the current situation that's being discussed, no matter what, I don't speak up unless I think there's something that I can add. So secondly, no matter what your position is, I think it's appropriate to speak up. I don't care if you're brand new, if it's your first day on the job, if it's your 10th year on the job, especially if you're asking a question that everyone has or you think you can add value to the convo, why the heck wouldn't you speak up? I know that as a leader of kind of a larger department, anytime I'd have a new employee or someone that was maybe a little less experienced, a lot of times they had really good questions because they didn't have the same perspective as everyone else on the team. So if you decide to speak up and for some strange reason you get some feedback telling you not to do that in the future, this is a really clear sign that you're probably working in a toxic culture. And if it was me, I would look for a new job or a new boss ASAP. So Noah, really good question. The answer again, speak up if you have something to say and don't worry about your position because value is value no matter where it's coming from. Okay, folks, we are jumping into it. Let's jump right into the meat and potatoes. So why are we discussing work-life balance? Why does it even matter? And for me, I want to kind of break down for folks and help them understand what true balance looks and feels like. Right? I want to also show folks what it's like to start taking steps to creating work-life balance, because maybe you don't have any balance right now. That's okay. I also want to debunk some common kind of work-life balance myths. And finally, I believe work-life balance is so important because there are so many people out there that think their work is everything. Their work is their identity. Nothing else matters. They prioritize their career or making money above everything else. And unfortunately, when you do that, you're not going to be fulfilled, and your rest of your life, the stuff that a lot of times is even more important, is going to suffer. So that's why I think it's so important to talk about work-life balance. I know, it can be really, really hard to strike the right equation with that and knowing where to focus your time and where not to focus your time and what that looks like. So for me, I want to give you as much as I can along the lines of what I've been through, the strategies that have worked, the things that don't work, and just kind of my go-to repeatable processes to make sure that I don't lose sight of the fact that I'm a well-rounded human being. I have stuff that happens outside of work. I have stuff that happens at work. And I want to make sure those two are in harmony. So how do I define work-life balance? For me, it's really simple. It's the act of keeping a fulfilling personal and professional life while achieving your goals. So it's important that we're able to be successful in both our personal and our professional life. We're not prioritizing one over the other. We're not letting one kind of shrink down, and we're making sure both of those, the sides of the coin, if you will, are in really good harmony. So it's really about finding the right balance between those two biggest areas of most of our lives. And finally, I think it's really the ability to have a long, healthy, impactful, effective life and career, right? I want to live a long time. I want to be effective during my time here in my life and in my career. I want to be impactful. I want to help people. And so really for me, that's what work-life balance is all about. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of share with you what work-life balance looks like for me right now. Right. So again, remember, I'm not working in my corporate job. I haven't done that for now about 10 or 11 months. I've started the podcast. I have my own career coaching business, along with some other ways that I generate content. So that's what I'm doing right now. So again, I want to share with you what it looks like for me. Yours might look different, right? Every single person has different priorities. We all work different jobs. So again, this is just what my work-life balance looks for me. So for me personally, it starts by I'm not working more than 30 hours a week. Right? If I was working in a corporate job, I would say I would want to be working no more than 40 hours a week. That's my goal. Are there going to be some weeks where I have to go a little above that? Of course. Are there going to be some weeks where I go below that? Absolutely. But at most, right now in my life, I don't want to be working more than 30 hours a week. And I'm happy to say for the last 10 months, I've been able to do that, which is awesome. The next thing for me is that I want to be home every night to have dinner with the wifey. That is my favorite time of the day. There's no other person I'd rather spend my evenings with. I want to make sure that whatever's going on outside of that takes a back seat. And so that when my wife is ready to eat dinner, when we're at home after work, we're hanging out, right? I'm not on my computer working. I'm not out with, colleagues at work. I'm at home with my wife, with the most important person to me. That also means for me that I want to have time to exercise regularly each week. That doesn't mean that I'm working so much that I forget to exercise or that I don't prioritize my health. And it's so easy to do. I've done that. In fact, 2 or 3 years ago, I was prioritizing work so much and I wasn't focusing on my health that I even started to see some small health problems, right? I won't get into the nitty gritty, but my health started to take a back seat because I put too much focus on my career. So that's the other thing I want you to know is that no one's perfect with this, and it's a journey, right? So there's going to be times where you're more balanced and maybe times where you're not as balanced. Jumping back into what it looks like for me now, another one is having plenty of time to do whatever the heck I want. I like to relax. I like to do stuff outside of work. I don't view my work as my full identity, right? I have so many other things that I think make up Austin's identity, whether that's playing music, the hobbies I have, the interests I have, the people I spend my time with, whatever that is. I want to make sure that I have plenty of time to do all that stuff. I don't want to just work for the weekend. I don't want to work so that I can just have, 1 hour a week of fun time. Like, I really love to have leisure time, and I like to have that a lot of times just at home with my wife. I'm an introvert, right? So I want to be able to spend time at home doing the things that bring me fulfillment, the things that are interesting to me. Another example of what work-life balance looks for me now is that I'm not having to drink to get through the week because I'm so burned out. If I'm having to drink a ton, or if I'm having to eat a whole bunch of crappy food to get that dopamine fix because things are going so bad at work, I'm working too much, I'm burned out, not a good sign for me. That's not work-life balance. Another thing for me is getting a proper amount of sleep every night, right? I want to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, depending on what's going on every single night. I don't want to be working so much that I'm not able to get dedicated sleep. Sleep is the most important thing, right along with diet and exercise. For me, work-life balance also means that I'm achieving my work deadlines and goals. That doesn't mean that I'm not putting a priority on my work, but I'm actually achieving my goals. I'm actually achieving the priorities, and I'm hitting the deadlines that either I've set or my clients have set. And then the last one, work-life balance for me also means having the ability to be spontaneous. Maybe that's leaving on a Tuesday afternoon in the middle of the day and going and hopping in the pool with the wifey, or going to see a movie on a Wednesday morning if there's a new matinee that I want to see. I don't know what it is, but I want to be able to be spontaneous. Take a hike, do something in the middle of the day. Basically, during the middle of the workday, I want really the ability to go and do whatever I want to do at the time I want to do it. Now, again, that's what it looks like for me. For the last 13 years of my career, some of those things didn't happen, right? I couldn't leave in the middle of the day and go necessarily be spontaneous. But all of the other things, those are really, for me, big, big priorities and a sign of a successful work and life balance. Exercising, plenty of time to do the things that give me fulfillment, lots of sleep, I'm taking care of my body, I'm not working more than 40 hours a week, and I'm getting to spend time with the people that mean the most to me. So for me, again, that's my wife. Okay, I want to transition. I thought it'd be kind of fun to break down some of the most common work-life beliefs or myths that I hear from people, and I want to kind of debunk some of those. So number one is, I hear this a lot, the more hours you work equals more productivity. No, you're wrong. Absolutely not. In fact, I think it's the exact opposite. If you're working a ton of hours and that's your signal that you're being productive, you have not figured out your career and you have not figured out your value. For me, it is all about being very, very intentional and adding value with the hours that I'm working. I don't just work to work. I'm not just spending time in the office to spend time in the office. If I'm working, there's something that I'm actually working towards and I'm actually adding value. So the people that brag about working 60 hours a week, I used to have a boss that I'd walk by his office and, he would be talking to his boss and they'd be saying, oh, I was up at 1 a.m. last night responding to emails. I'm always on. And kind of like patting each other on the back, and his boss would also say the same thing back to him. And I just thought to myself, wow, this is so embarrassing. Like, your value is how many hours you work. How sad is that? That means you basically put no value on the actual work, and that it's just how many hours you work. That's what you think is important. And it's not. So that's a really common myth. And then I don't want you to believe absolutely. Another one is always being available shows your dedication to your boss and company. No, that's wrong too. Always being available actually dilutes your value. If you're always available and people can get to you at any time, then they're going to take you for granted. So not being available all the time is actually a good thing. If you're available, be available. If you're not, make sure you put your out of office on, you turn off your IM. I don't care what it is, but do not respond to messages late at night. That's not healthy. You shouldn't be having to respond to messages on a Sunday morning with you're out to brunch with your family. Like, there needs to be separation between work and life, and there needs to be boundaries, which of course we'll talk more about in a minute. Another one is saying no or setting boundaries at work will hurt your career. I'm going to tell you, it doesn't. It does not hurt your career as long as you're respectful and you have been very thoughtful on how you say no or set your boundaries at work. I'm going to give you lots of examples and show you how to do that, but I don't believe that will hurt your career at all. I've done it throughout my entire career, and I'm happy to say it didn't hurt my career. I was able to achieve the things I wanted to achieve. I hit the goals I wanted to hit by the ages that I wanted to hit them. Finally, work-life balance only happens as you get to the end of your career. I don't believe this at all. I've heard so many people say that, well, for the first 20 years, you really just got to put your head down and grind, and that's how you're going to get ahead. Well, maybe that was true for our, older generations, baby boomers, or even, maybe the generation after that. But I can tell you now with all certainty that you can 100% have work-life balance in the beginning of your career, in the middle of your career, and at the end of your career. It just takes the right focus. Again, it takes setting boundaries and all of the things we'll get into in a second. So I thought those would be kind of fun to break down some of those myths. Maybe you've thought those things before. Maybe you've heard someone you respect say that. If you have, take a second look at those things and really think, are these the things that define work-life balance? Are these really true things, or is this just what everyone else is doing? My guess is if you really put some thought into it, if you look around, if you try these things, you're going to realize that you can absolutely have work-life balance without having to sell your soul, right? Okay, transitioning to the next topic. Is work-life balance attainable if you have ambitious career goals? So for me, this one hits close to home. I want to try to approach this section without any arrogance or ego, but I'll start by saying, ever since I was 18 years old, I had incredibly large career goals. I had numbers of teammates that I wanted to have within my department. I had goals on how much salary I was going to get at certain ages, certain promotions, you name it. I have always been someone that's been very ambitious and focused on getting to the next step in my career. And I'm happy to tell you that even though I've been able to be ambitious and achieve all of the things that I've wanted to in my career so far, I've been able to do that. And I've also been able to maintain what I believe to be a really healthy work-life balance. So many folks think that you can't do that, right? And that in order to hit that career goal, in order to get that raise, in order to get that promotion, that job title, whatever it is, they have to forego their life in pursuit of that work. And it is not accurate. And the reason why it's not accurate is that it just takes focus and it takes intensity, and it really takes a desire to make sure that your work is valuable and meaningful, so that the hours you put in are so incredibly valuable that you don't have to put in a ton of hours because you're getting the same results as the person who's putting in 50 hours or 60 hours, because maybe you're focused on what actually will move the needle within the company. And I'm sure you've heard this overused saying, work smarter, not harder. And there's a reason why that saying is used so often. It's because it's solid advice. So instead of putting in endless hours at the office, focus on making your hours that you put in incredibly impactful. Only focus on what matters. Get rid of all the noise. Find out what you're truly good at, where you can truly add value, and spend your time on those things. So again, I tell you about being ambitious and having career goals to show you it can happen. It's not just happened in my life. I've seen many, many people around me who've been able to really create a perfect harmony between work and life, all while hitting those career goals. So don't believe that it's one or the other. It's not a zero-sum game. Okay, so let's say you've been listening and you maybe haven't had really good work-life balance up until now. Maybe you're kind of struggling. Maybe you feel like, Austin, I kind of have to work 60 hours a week in order to kind of keep my head above water. That's what my company expects, or, that's what the kind of work that I'm doing right now. Maybe you feel like you've kind of went the wrong direction. That's okay, folks. Right? As I told you in the beginning, there are going to be seasons where you're going to be more balanced. There's going to be seasons where you are less balanced. But really what matters to me, and what I think should matter to you, is having the self-awareness to make changes along the way. So what I want to do now is give you a couple of different things. In fact, 5 things that I believe can help you start getting a better work-life balance today. So the first thing is getting perspective on what matters. Is your career more important than your relationships? Is your career more important than your health? Is your career going to keep you fulfilled after you retired? Is money the answer to your happiness? I'm going to go ahead and give you the secret answer here. The answer is no to all of those things. So focus on the stuff that matters. Your relationships matter. Your health matters. Your areas where you help others in life matters. Your interests outside of work matters. So making an impact, helping others, being the best overall version of yourself, those are the priorities. Not, can I work more hours? Can I get that next promotion? Can I move up in my career? Those things are going to happen, but they shouldn't happen at the expense of the other things that are very important in life. The next one is setting boundaries and saying no at work. So you can't say yes to everything and everyone. You're going to dilute your value if you're too available. I said that earlier. And it's so true. If I'm always everything to everyone, then I can't really differentiate myself. And they'll start to just think of me as someone who is always available to do everything. They're not going to think of me as a specialist in one area. They're not going to remember what I'm best at and then allow me to do those things. So it's super important that you say no to projects and tasks that don't help you with your overall goal. So even if your boss comes to you with a little project that they may need help on, I want you to take a second and think, hey, is this a high visibility, high value project that is going to stretch me, make me better, put me in a better light, allow me to move forward? If the answer is no, then don't be afraid to say no. Of course, be respectful. Explain, what else you have on your plate, explain what you're focused on, explain the situation, and your boss is going to understand as long as you've done that respectfully and if you've done that the right way. So don't overcommit and don't agree to unrealistic deadlines. In a moment, I'll tell you a story about unrealistic deadlines, and I'll give you some examples of something that I've been through. But that one can always get people is saying yes to everything and then also saying yes to unrealistic deadlines. If the project you've been asked to do is going to take you 2 weeks to complete, don't say you're going to have it done in a week. Say it's going to take 2 weeks. If your boss needs an email from you by the end of the day and you know that's not possible, you have back-to-back client meetings, then tell your boss the response is going to come in the next day. Be comfortable setting those boundaries and saying no at work when appropriate. Now, of course, do this within reason. Think strategically. You know your company, your situation better than I do and everyone else. If you know that saying no to this project or not agreeing to this deadline is going to hurt you, then obviously make the other decision and say yes. But take a second before you just say yes and get in the habit of saying yes and really think, do I have to say yes to this? Do I have to commit to this? Moving on, next one. Find the right culture. So if you're working for a culture where you hear things like, I was up late responding to emails, or I'm always available on IM, this might be a sign that it's not super healthy. If it's expected that folks work all the hours in the end of the night, they work after 6 p.m., whatever the time is, the quitting time for you, and that you're always available on weekends, and that you're maybe not feeling great when you're supposed to take vacations, like they don't want you to do that, they don't say anything, but they maybe make you feel bad about it, like that's not okay. That's not a good culture. That's not normal. If you've heard people say that's normal, or if you heard other people in your company make you believe that's normal, it's not. That is a sign of an unhealthy culture. We are human beings. We are not machines. We're meant to have time off. We're meant to have lives outside of work. And if your boss or your company is making you feel like you can't have a life outside of work, that's an unhealthy culture, and it might be time to leave. And then the last one, a really, really important one, for getting balance between your work and life is you need to get a life outside of work. And I don't know if you've been like that. I know I have at different seasons in my career have felt like my job, my work was my identity. And I got to tell you, it's not a good feeling because you can get fired or let go tomorrow. You can get in an accident and become unable to do your job. Stuff can happen in an instant that can prevent you from doing your work. And if your identity is tied to your work, imagine what will happen when you're unable to do that. Your life will go into chaos. You'll feel depressed. You'll feel like you can't add any value. You might feel like there's nothing worth doing in life. And that's a big risk. So my advice to you is find some stuff outside of work that brings you fulfillment, that you feel like gets you excited, that gives you energy. Maybe it's a hobby. Maybe it's volunteering. Maybe it's, starting a business. Maybe it's building relationships with people. I don't care what it is, but don't allow your work to be your identity and don't allow that to take precedence over everything else in your life. Okay, we talked about work-life balance. We talked about some of the myths. We talked about what work-life balance looks like for me. And, I'm hoping you've got a couple of strategies as well that you can start implementing to start setting boundaries, to start having a little more balance. Again, I don't want you to think that this is going to be perfect forever because nothing in our careers or life is perfect. there's ebbs and flows. There's times where it's good. There's times where it's bad. I want to tell you about a story that happened a few years ago. So I've worked for this boss, and I've actually told you guys about this boss before. It's funny. I'll just take a quick second. It's funny. I actually despised working for this guy, but now a few years later, I actually have some perspective. And what I find ironic is that this guy has given me more content ideas than I could have ever imagined. So take this as a lesson that the hard stuff we go through can actually be incredibly valuable later on. It just takes a little perspective and time. Okay, back to the story. So I was working for this boss, and he had a lovely habit of dropping work on my plate and then expecting a very short turnaround time or a very short deadline. And first off, if you're a leader and you do that, shame on you. That is just not true leadership. But I remember this one occasion where he approached me and needed my team to reach out to some of our top clients in the firm. And he basically wanted us to collect some feedback, some data for them so he could use that during an upcoming senior executive meeting. So he asked if my team could start making those calls, that outreach immediately and have it done by the end of the day. Mind you, this was about 11 a.m. And I don't know if you're like me or if there's people around you that are like me, where most of those people have their day or week planned out in advance, right? I don't just have 7 hours of available time each day to do whatever is suddenly dropped on my plate. So to ask a group to do that didn't make much sense. So, of course, I listened to what his request was, but I relayed my concerns. And he insisted, though, that this was important. And I'll be honest, in that moment, part of me wanted to just say, screw it. Okay, we'll do it. But the other part of me thought, you know what? I don't need to give in, because if I don't set this boundary, he's going to continue to do that over and over and over again. And I've really found that people treat you the way you allow them to treat you. So if you allow people to walk all over you, that's exactly what they're going to do. If you show people that you have respect for yourself and for your team and you have boundaries, they're going to give you that respect and they're going to respect your boundaries. So if I had gone with this aggressive deadline, I knew he was going to do it again. So instead, I respectfully started to ask him some questions like, when did we hear about this senior leader meeting? Right? I wanted to know, did you just hear about this morning, or was this something that maybe you learned about 2 weeks ago and just had poor time management? Then I asked him, when is the meeting? When does he actually need the data? And then I asked him another question, which was like, hey, is my team the best team to focus on this engagement? Or maybe there's another group who has capacity. Because at the time, my team had zero capacity. We were way overworked. And to ask them to do this would have just completely destroyed the week and the morale of the team. Right? And I wanted to get a better understanding of kind of the situation. Again, there are going to be some times where a short deadline is unavoidable. Maybe a system within your company has gone down and you guys need to get it up and running. Okay, I understand that. It's time sensitive. It has to be done right away. But I've also found that a lot of the times these deadlines or these big rushes that we're facing in companies are imposed by just human beings who make mistakes, and they have just chosen to make that a rush. And your rush, your deadline doesn't need to be my rush or my deadline, right? So I wanted to get a little better understanding, and it turned out he had actually created that extreme deadline so he could have like 2 days to review the data. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. This was going to be a small amount of data. He did not need 2 days. At most, he maybe needed 2 hours. So I asked if we could make the outreach in 3 days instead of finishing it that day. This would give my team more time to make the calls while not disrupting their existing commitments. My boss begrudgingly agreed, and guess what? He never tried that BS again with me. I was really proud of myself for not overcommitting and setting those boundaries. And I know my team was so appreciative when I told them the extra time we were going to get. So I tell you that story to just show you, you can set boundaries. You can make sure that people respect you and your team. It takes a little finesse. It takes a respectful mindset, but it can be done. So to wrap up, I want to give you a challenge. This week, I want you to do a review of your work and your life balance. Are you spending too much time at work? Are you letting your boss take advantage of you? Are you a healthy human overall, right? Are you sleeping? Are you eating the right way? Are you working out? And then I want you to make a small change this week. Make it a priority to focus on your health. Spend some time with your significant other, or do the things that you know are going to make you a happier, healthier human being outside of work. Thank you so much for listening. Make it a great day. This has been the Introvert Leader Podcast. Subscribe for new episodes every other Wednesday.